Hello witches, welcome back to the channel. Once again, this is Hectarios, Witch of the Realms. For today's video, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about CERN. If you haven't seen the news lately, the Large Hadron Collider restarting its experiments today, July 5th. Of course, there's a lot of different theories and conspiracies. Some of them are very wild stories about what's going on with CERN. I'm not going to get into all of that, but I do want to talk about sort of my opinion, my take on it, my theories, kind of what I think is going on with it. So first of all, I do personally notice when they're using the Large Hadron Collider, when they're doing the experiments, I notice a psychic shift when this device is on, when they're doing the experiments. And I have my theories of why that is, and that's what I want to talk about here. I don't know how it is for all of you. I did see a post this morning on Facebook where another, I think she's like clairvoyant, she's an astrologer. She's very in tune with energies. I've been following her for years. Her name is Elizabeth Peru. I shared her post on Facebook about CERN that she posted this morning. I'll just go ahead and read the post from Elizabeth Peru itself. Significant global news. The Large Hadron Collider, Switzerland, July 5th, 2022. You may have heard that on July 4th, it's been 10 years since the Large Hadron Collider discovered a new particle with features consistent with the God particle. The LHC was built to find the God particle, known as the Higgs-Boson. It's an elusive particle that gives mass to matter, turning spirit into the physical. The world's largest and most powerful particle collider started back up in April 2022 after a 3-year break for upgrades in preparation for its third run. From Tuesday, July 5th, it will run around the clock for nearly 4 years at a record energy of 13.6 trillion electron volts. The European Organization for Nuclear Research, CERN, announced at a press briefing last week. That ramp up in never before experienced energy levels held underground on Earth, smashing particles together, happens today and continues. It will continue off and on over the next 4 years. See, with the LHC experiments that they're doing at CERN, they put the machine through different cycles of running the experiments, and so for several years they'll have the experiments ongoing, so the machine will be on. They go through intervals of turning it off and on during that time period, but for a prolonged period, like for the next 4 years, it will be on and off as they're running the experiments for several months at a time. But for the last 3 years, they had it completely shut off because they also go through cycles and intervals of keeping it off for a prolonged period of time while they're doing different upgrades, changing things out and things like that, getting ready for the next set of experiments. So for the last 3 years, it was completely shut off. And now for the next 4 years, it's going to be on again. So that's important to be aware of. Here's my take on this for all who have asked. From an energy perspective, if you are sensitive to energy, are physically aware, and are connecting to higher consciousness, as most of the people on this page are, then you may feel an acceleration of your thoughts and incoming information streams. Take note of how your channelings increase over the next week or so until you attune to this new flow. Look after yourself physically. With an active solar cycle 25 and increasing Earth's heartbeat, the Schumann resonance, which could also spike in volume given this ramp up in power, you too could feel a rise in blood pressure, uncertainty, or general uneasiness. As always, stay hydrated and ground yourself by being out in nature. Meditate daily, stretch your body, and focus on the positives and on what you love. Stay aligned with the light. I expect your connection with spirit to increase exponentially. And then she links some other posts for more details on things. I shared this on my Facebook page, which you can find in my description box. So you can go read this and go click on the links and see the further information as well. I'm going to go ahead and read the post that I made when I shared this. Pretty much this. I've been thinking of posting my take on this too. I don't know about anyone else, but I definitely noticed an increase in magical power and consciousness when CERN is running. It is because they are doing experiments with the God particle, or what in the occult we call the Astral Light. astral realm. This is a cosmic atmosphere, a sea of energy universe-wide, of which every point is connected to every other. In other words, the God particle is a single point or particle of the astral light when forcibly ripped apart from its normal fluid-like, all-connected state. What they are doing with the God particle is affecting everything. To be more specific, their experiments are mainly aimed to break matter down and catch glimpses of the God particle, to glean some understanding and knowledge about it in the dimension it occupies. I believe that is then echoed and reflected in our collective consciousness, because our psychic minds are very much connected and in tune with the astral realms, though some may be more sensitive than others, of course. So you can think of it as they're causing ripples in the cosmic field of the astral light, centered at the LHC, where they're doing these experiments, where they're ripping pieces of the astral light out of itself. These ripples are wavering out across the globe and then into space. And that's basically my post. I did add, I have a lot more to say about it. I have a lot more theories and opinions and a lot more information that's just too much to write. And I had a couple comments already, one from Katina. She says, yes, I feel it. Thank you for posting this. Barbara says, I definitely feel it too. Other people are feeling this. I'm not just tripping. Like, people can feel when this machine is doing this experiment and the sort of psychic waves and shifts that take place when it happens. If you feel this too, leave a comment below. Let me know what you feel, what you think about it, of course. But I want to go in a little bit more detail on what I was saying, what my theories are about it. So the God particle, the Higgs-Boson particle, is believed to be sort of the underlying particle of reality that brings things into physical matter, turns the non-physical into the physical. And at the same time, it's also, they describe it as like this glue that holds everything together at the same time. So it brings physicality into existence, and it also holds it together. It holds it into physical form. And this is very similar to descriptions that the ancients had of the astral light or the astral realms. This is on theosophy.wiki. Now there's a lot on this page I disagree with. I'm just going to say it like that. Theosophy, Madame Blavatsky, though I kind of respect her, I think that she has a lot of misinformation in her books and in her philosophy and practice, to be completely honest. So I take things with a grain of salt when I read it from her or read about theosophy in general. However, on this page, there is the original quote from Eliphas Levi, who wrote the book Dogma and Ritual of High Magic, which I do really agree with his opinion on the astral light. So that's what I'm going to be reading and sharing with you all, his description of it. Eliphas Levi in the astral light. Much of the theory connected with the idea of the astral light has its origins in the writings of Eliphas Levi, where it plays a key role. Writing of the astral light, Eliphas Levi says that there exists in nature a force infinitely exceeding that of steam, a force that would enable the man capable of seizing and directing it to change the face of the world. The ancients knew this force. It consists in a universal agent whose supreme law is equilibrium, and whose direction is directly related to the great arcanum of transcendental magic. Through the use of this agent, one can change the very order of the seasons, produce the phenomenon of day in the middle of the night, enter instantaneously into contact with the farthest ends of the earth, see events on the other side of the world, as Apollonius of Tyana did, heal or attack at a distance, and confer on one's speech universal success and influence. This agent, barely glimpsed by the groping disciples of Mesmer, is nothing other than the first matter of the great work of the medieval adepts. Eliphas Levi wrote that the astral light was created when God uttered the words, "Let there be light." It is a surrounding fluid that penetrates all things. It is indifferent in itself and can be used for good or evil. He further notes that the astral light performs another important function. It is a kind of universal record keeper that registers all of our desires, intentions, and acts. Eliphas Levi believed in the connection between heaven and earth and never questioned the Hermetic principle, as above, so below. But he used a new terminology for his theories and ensured the spread of the new term, Astral Light. So really, he's the one that sort of invented calling this the Astral Light. Other people might call this the ether, the fifth element. Some people refer to it as Akasha. Even though Blavatsky adopted the term Astral Light, she explains that Eliphas Levi sometimes identifies the Astral Light with what Theosophists call Akasha, with the Akashic record and stuff like that. Once again, this is where I sort of disagree with Blavatsky's differentiation between the Astral Light and Akasha. Once again, I tend to agree with Eliphas Levi. I think it is one and the same thing. There are some other differences as well. Blavatsky and Theosophy think that the Astral Light is only particular to the Earth, whereas once again Levi sees it more as a cosmic force penetrating everything. So there's some differences there, and once again I tend to view it more as the original way that it was described by Eliphas Levi. That is how I view it, that is how I perceive it, that's how I experience it, and that's how I'm going to be talking about it. It's a cosmic penetrating force, like an ocean or a sea that we're just immersed in, and it penetrates all of space, all of the multiverse, all of reality is penetrated by this one ether, this fluid, this astral light, right? That's what I think the God particle is. Imagine that the astral light is an ocean. A single particle of that is going to look just like a particle. But if you see the whole thing as it really is, it's an ocean, it's a sea. It's this huge mass of water. That's really what we're talking about here with this energy. It's a whole being, it's a whole thing, but if you measure it and deduce it down, you're gonna see individual particles. So that's what the God particle is. It's a single particle of this glue that holds reality together. So that's how we need to understand it when we're talking about this. Now, the reason why that's important is because what the Large Hadron Collider does is it tears apart this glue. It tears apart matter itself. They're crashing these particles together so violently, so destructively, that it breaks it completely apart down to its base reality, to where the God particle itself even detaches from the rest of the particles, and they're able to just see it in and of itself, or that's what they're trying to do. Now think about that. What is happening there? This is probably something that's not meant to happen in the universe. It's not meant to happen in the multiverse of reality. They're ripping a particle out of the whole unified field, right? I don't think that occurs in nature. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, if you know. But I don't think in normal nature that there's any type of destructive force that is powerful enough to rip apart the particles to where the cosmic glue that's holding it together even is separated as its own particle, as the God particle. I mean, if that happened in nature, they wouldn't be doing these experiments in the first place. They're making it happen. And the reason why I feel like that is such an important thing to emphasize and talk about is because they're ripping a particle out of this unified field that holds everything together, that can't be without repercussions in some way, without consequences in some way. And I think that one of the consequences is that it causes these ripples in that field of energy in the astral light. It causes these ripples to spread out from the point where it happens, which is at the LHC. And that energy wave spreads across the globe, and it spreads out into space, and who knows how far it goes. It's like dropping a stone into a pond. Those ripples are going to ripple out because it was that field of water, that field of fluid was disturbed. And so there's a rippling effect. And I feel like that's definitely what happens when they're doing these experiments. And you have to remember too, it's not just one time. They're doing these experiments for 4 years at a time this time, right? So they're going off and on for several months, just constantly doing this, okay? So you have to think about it in that way as well. It's not just a one and done thing, right? They're continuously doing this. And so it's these ripples and ripples and ripples just waving out from this machine. In a way, you can view it as it's opening a portal. I'm not necessarily saying that it's a portal to any particular place or anything like that, or that there's entities on the other side like some of these conspiracy theories say, but it is a portal in a way of the flowing of the energy, because you have to think about it. They're ripping a particle out of this unified field. Well, what's going to happen? That space that has been created by one particle being removed, or it's actually several particles, it's not just one. Every time they do this experiment and they crash these molecules and particles together, it's more than just one God particle that comes out of that explosion, if you will. There's several God particles that are holding matter together at once on any given object or whatever, or other particle of a different type. There's several God particles that are holding it together, right? That game Jenga, you know, with the blocks that you have to remove. Imagine that's the Astral Light, that tower. And what they're doing, they're pulling out some pieces. Okay, so they're pulling out these individual particles out of that unified field. What's going to happen? It's going to cause some kind of instability. It's going to cause, you know, something to shift because they're taking out a piece. If you take out too many pieces in the wrong place, I mean, the whole tower comes crashing down. So think about that. I'm not trying to scare anyone or say that that's what's going to happen, but I do think to a small degree, at least in a certain area of the astral light, you know, let's say the astral light that's surrounding the Earth, where this experiment's taking place. Okay, they're ripping out these particles for months and years at a time, all in this concentrated area. That's going to weaken the uniformity of the astral light in that area, and it's going to ripple out. Okay, so in a way, you can view this as the opening of a portal through the causing of that instability and the way that the energy is flowing there. You would think that the astral light itself would almost sort of rush in, if you're viewing it as a fluid, where these particles are being removed, it's sort of going to have to rush in to fill that space back up again. That's just how we know that matter works. Anytime when you create a vacuum in a space that's not already a vacuum, stuff has to come in and fill it up. Okay, so that's what they're doing. They're creating a sort of a vacuum, an empty space, when they're pulling these particles out of the unified field of the astral light itself. And so something's rushing in to fill it up, right? So there's this disturbance, this stirring, and that's bound to have some kind of repercussions. Psychic repercussions, energetic repercussions, maybe even some repercussions in reality itself. Okay, who really knows? No one, in fact, knows, and that's really why this is such a hot topic, because no one really even knows what will happen when they're doing this stuff. Yet they're just doing it on behalf of all humanity, and no one else gets to say so, right? So that is something that's it's a hot topic, okay? Do we as a species even have the right to be tampering with this stuff? This cosmic energy that's holding all of reality together, holding it in place, holding it in its form, holding it together. Do we have the right as a species to be meddling with that and ripping it apart? I mean, that's a debate in and of itself. But that's not what this video is about. Okay, they're doing it, it's happening, there's no really point to debate it. It's something that they're doing, it's happening, so let's just talk about, you know, what that means. We don't know what that means, not fully. We don't know the full consequences or the repercussions of it, so it's hard to even talk about that, but we can speculate, we can theorize, and we can talk about what we're feeling from it, right? Especially on the psychic level, where your psychic mind is constantly connected with the astral light, with the astral realm. So yes, you can feel that something is happening, at least if you're sensitive to it, at least if you're already in tune with the astral light, if you're in tune with the astral realm, you can feel this sort of disturbance in the energy, the stirring up of energy. You know, like I was saying when I was reading about Eliphas Levi and his quote about the astral light, he describes it as an energy that is indifferent in itself. It can be used for good or for evil, okay? And it's the universal record keeper. Now let's talk about that. What is going on with the Mandela effect? I guarantee you the Mandela effect is going to stir up again once they're, you know, running this machine again over the next 4 years. I guarantee you the Mandela effect is going to take place again on many different things, and that's because they're tampering with the Akashic record. The astral light is the Akashic record. It's one and the same thing. Okay? They're tampering with it. They're pulling pieces out of it. okay? That's bound to mess up the Akashic record in some small ways. Once again, I'm not saying that they're going to completely destroy this or anything like that. I'm not trying to scare anybody, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're pulling these little pieces out of there, tampering it in a very small way, relatively. I mean, the Astral Light is universe-wide, multiverse-wide. It's a huge thing. So on our little speck of dust planet Earth, and a little even smaller speck of dust machine, and even smaller speck of dust God particles that they're pulling out of it. Okay, let's be realistic here. It's a small effect. But I do believe that they are affecting the uniformity of the Astral Light, at least around our planet. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about some huge cosmic event. I'm talking about in a more contained way around our planet that they're doing this. But it's bound to cause these different shifts, these different consequences. And I do believe that that's when the Mandela effect started happening, was when they first started messing with this machine in the first place. Okay, I believe that they caused the Mandela effect to start happening. Definitely, I think that that's one of the things that we can expect as far as like kind of on the negative side. I don't really think that the Mandela effect is something that's of great harm, but it is something that I would consider kind of negative because it is changing reality fundamentally, and you know, that can't be something that's good. Maybe it is, I don't know. Maybe it can be something that's good. You know, it'd be great if we can erase things like Hitler, you know, and slavery. Can we erase that from history, please? LHC? But I'm just saying, you know, it's something that is a consequence of tampering with this stuff. Let's consider also another negative aspect. You know, is it opening a portal? Are entities coming through? Let's talk about this. Once again, the Astral Light is something that is indifferent. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just this energy underlying reality. Now, in the occult and in the magical spheres, we know a little bit more about the Astral Light. Okay, it is affected by our thoughts. It's the medium through which, when we cast spells, when we create thought forms, when we have thoughts in general, anything of the psychic reality, you can view it like this. The psychic realm and the astral realm are literally one and the same. The exact same thing. Okay? So anything that's going on in the psychic realm is at once affected by the astral realm, but it also affects the astral realm. It's a feedback loop. Okay? So whenever you cast a spell, whenever you do magic, whenever you're doing anything psychic, clairvoyant, channeling, sensing energies, communicating with entities, like I said, channeling, that's all intermingled. That's all literally one and the same thing. So that's another thing to think about. Is that why, once again, the Mandela effect happens? Because they're pulling pieces out of the astral realm. They're pulling pieces out of the Akashic record. The psychic Akashic record. Is that why it's changing people's perceptions? Is it changing reality itself? Or is it changing the psychic perceptions? Or is it both? Is it literally the same thing? If the Astral Light is the underlying glue that holds reality together, who's to say it's not the same thing? If it's changing reality, it's changing the psychic at the same time. It's changing both at the same time. But yeah, that's another part of it. These things with entities and things like that, and spirit communication, psychic energies are also affected by this. Once again, this isn't a necessarily bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing either. It's more of just this disturbance that's taking place, this stirring up of energy, this shifting of energies, changing energies with what they're doing. So what can come through that? I think that there is some negative influence. There is some negative psychic energy. There is some negative entities that come through. So that's something to be aware of and be careful with going forward in the next 4 years. Okay? And any time going forward after that, when they turn this machine back on, pay attention to it. Pay attention when they shut it down for years at a time, and then pay attention when they turn it back on for years at a time. Okay? Just be aware of that. It is something that we have to deal with. So just be aware of that. And another thing too, this next 4 years, they're running this machine at a higher electron volt than they ever have before. Okay, so this next 4 years, they're running it at the highest it's been. It's going to be the most powerful it's been. It's going to be breaking apart more particles and producing more God particles out of that explosion. So it's going to be kind of the most destructive it's ever been in that regard. So it's going to be the most powerful experiments that they've ever done with it. Okay, so that's another important note with this. So to go a little bit more detail on the psychic stuff, I will say this. What I think is happening, every time that they run this machine, they're basically creating a thinning of the veil, if you will. They're artificially thinning the veil. Whether if they even realize that's what I really don't think all of the conspiracy theories saying that they're doing all of this stuff on purpose to, you know, let through negative entities and stuff like that. I don't really think that that's their goal. I really do believe that they're just doing this for science, to understand the God particle, maybe to be able to manipulate it even. Okay, who's to say what our future looks like if they succeed in that, right? So I don't view this as a negative or a positive thing. I think that it's just something that we just have to deal with that they're doing. I do believe that maybe some good can come out of these experiments, but I do believe that it also might have some negative, you know, repercussions as well. But what I do know that it's doing is it's creating a thinning of the veil. And more than that, it's creating a disturbance in the psychic field. It's creating a disturbance in the astral light itself and all these ripples. And I believe that that has both positive and negative repercussions. So let's look at this through the lens of someone who's opening their psychic eye. Someone who's opening their third eye for the first time. Or just in general. Any type of development of the psychic faculties, right? You're making yourself more sensitive to the psychic realm. And that's positive and negative at the same time. It's a double-edged sword. You're making yourself more sensitive. You're making yourself more vulnerable, in a sense, to the psychic realm. So you're able to perceive things. So you're developing your psychic ability, and that's good. But the bad part is that you're perceiving also the negative stuff. You're more sensitive to receiving the negative stuff and the positive. So it's both. Okay, and then you also have to learn how to take precautions. You have to learn how to adapt to the sensitivity that you've opened yourself to. That's just the underlying truth of any type of psychic development, or magical development for that matter. I believe it goes hand in hand. A large part of magical development is being able to sense energies and work with them. So it goes hand in hand, really. The more that you advance in the magical, spiritual, psychic path, the more that you develop, the more sensitive that you're becoming. And that is a good thing, right? The more sensitive that you are, the more control you get over things. Because it's increasing your awareness. Your sensitivity increases your awareness of the different types of energy, the different levels of energy, when something's shifting, when something's changing, the energy that you're putting out. You can feel and change all of these different minutiae of these different levels and layers of things. That is very good, and that is what's required for mastery of it. However, you're also making yourself more sensitive to the negative stuff that's out there. That's also good too, because, you know, you're able to detect that energy and know what's up with that. So it is also all good in a greater scope. Psychic development, psychic sensitivity, magical development, magical sensitivity. It's all good for your mastery. You want to be aware of everything, the good and the bad. Okay, that's the goal, so that you can control it, so that you can do what you need to do. But the thing is that you have to take control. So that's why I more so compare it to someone that's just opening their psychic sensitivity for the first time. It's a double-edged sword in that regard, because you're not a master yet. You haven't developed far enough yet. So you are opening yourself to the negative and the positive, and that can affect you. So it's a double-edged sword in that regard. But like I say, you know, it all depends on really where you're at with your practices and your development, what you can then make of the situation. Okay, I'll say it like that. So once again, what they're doing is it has positive and negative repercussions for people who aren't ready for it, which is, you know, largely the masses. There's going to be some negative things happening. There's going to be some negative psychic events, negative energies coming through, negative entities coming through. And for people who aren't prepared to deal with that, it's a negative event, which is once again largely the masses. There are more people getting into spirituality, metaphysics, psychic development. You know, there's more and more people every single day going forward. But there's still so many that have no concept or idea or anything about it or how to deal with it or anything like that. So for those people, there's going to be some negative stuff coming through for sure. But as well as good. Just because they're unconscious of the psychic realm does not mean that everything that happens to them is negative concerning the psychic realm. There's also going to be some positive stuff too. But it's a mixed bag is the point. And it's largely the same for, you know, people like us who are developing, who are spiritual, who are trying to master these things. It's a mixed bag as well. However, we have more control. We're prepared to deal with things. You know, or at least that is the hope. That is the idea. You know, that is the belief that we're able to, you know, do what we need to do and manipulate these energies ourselves when it needs to be done. Not to downplay it though. Once again, I do think that this is a time period where we need to be aware of our protection. We need to be super aware of our psychic space and, you know, not letting negative stuff come through. However, let's circle back to the fact of what this is doing. It's just creating a thinning of the veil. It's creating a sensitive time period where things can come through. So let's look at the positive aspect of this. Okay? Because once again, that's mainly what I was saying in my post and some of what Elizabeth was saying in her post. You know, you can expect increased sensitivity for the positive stuff. You can expect your channelings to become stronger and more clear and more maybe prevalent, happening more often. You can expect your spiritual knowledge to increase during this time at an exponential rate, faster than it normally would. Your spiritual development, your spiritual growth, your communication with entities that are helping you develop, all of that should become stronger and more focused and more frequent during this time period. And that is what I notice when they have this machine running. I get stronger communication. I get more frequent communication. Things just open and expand. It's very much a thinning of the veil in and of itself. And there's a lot you can do with that and that you will receive during that time period. So there is a lot of positive with this as well. I also notice that it feels like my magic becomes stronger as well. I consider myself a master witch at this point. I consider myself a high priest, someone who's very proficient at magic. I do magical services for people all the time. I hardly, if ever, don't manifest what I'm trying to do. Okay, I'm just gonna say, I'm not trying to brag or anything. I'm just saying I consider myself proficient at magic. I consider myself a master witch. And even then, when they have this machine running, I still feel like my powers become even stronger. Okay? So I want to say that. It does seem as though something that they're doing there with, you know, these God particles and stuff, it makes magic stronger. So I just had to say that and throw that in here as well. Let me know if you experienced that too. Leave a comment down below. Maybe a lot of it has to do with more gnosis coming in, because I get a lot of gnosis from spirits. I get a lot of channelings. I get a lot of information and knowledge that is about spiritual development. Okay, so maybe that's why I feel like my magic becomes stronger. Maybe it's not necessarily the energy of magic becoming stronger, but it might just be that because the spirits are communicating to me more and more knowledge, that knowledge is making me more powerful during this time. That could be what it is. But, you know, it might be that the energy of magic itself also just becomes more concentrated and more powerful during this time. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. So yeah, that's basically going to cover it for this video. I've gone on for like an hour now. I'm going to have to edit this down. Actually, it's over an hour. I'm going to have to edit it down for sure. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to talk about, all I wanted to cover. You know, I just wanted to, you know, bring this to your awareness as well if you haven't seen this already, and let you know, pay attention to the energy, especially over the next 4 years while this machine is on at the highest power it's ever been, doing the most it's ever done. Just be aware that that's happening. And so on the one hand, this video is a warning that you need to definitely keep your protections up and be extra conscious of the psychic realm, of the psychic space, of the astral realm at this time. To be vigilant in your protection. However, this video is also just a PSA that, you know, you can also use this time to really tap into your spiritual development, your psychic development, your gnosis, your communication with entities, all of that, to, you know, further increase your spiritual development and your connection with other entities even, as well as increase your magical power and proficiency with this energy as well. So yeah, that's the message of this video. Let me know what you think, what you feel. Please leave a comment down below so I know. Leave a like on this video if it helped you or was informative for you. And until next time, as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Hail Hecate, hail to the witches, hail to the Astral Light, and blessed be.